So my name is Dylan Zavagno. I'm the Adult Services Coordinator at the Deerfield Public Library, my hometown library in suburban Chicago, uh, Deerfield, Illinois. In 2017, I launched the Deerfield Public Library Podcast, where I host interviews with all sorts of authors. And every June since 2021, in honor of Pride Month, the podcast transforms into Queer Poem a Day, our collaboration with poet and professor Lisa Heighton. So why is Queer Poem a Day hosting a program on Louise Glück, the American poet, Nobel Prize winner, who passed this past October? Glück did not identify as a member of the queer community, but when Lisa and I were dreaming up programming for this year, we realized that many of our past participants in Queer Poem a Day and several of my other interview guests on the Deerfield Public Library podcasts had direct connections to Louise as students, colleagues, and friends. So we thought this might give us a unique opportunity to host a tribute reading. We also realized that if it wasn't for Louise, Queer Poem a Day wouldn't exist. So Lisa and I actually connected when I was interviewing Dan Chason for the podcast. I was really excited. I texted my high school English teacher, I'm interviewing Dan Chason. And he said, oh, you got to talk to my other former student, Lisa Heighton. She was 2 years ahead of you in school, and she took a class from Dan. So Lisa and I did a Zoom, and we talked all about Dan Chason. And at the end, she said, I've had this idea of doing some sort of gay poem a day thing. Could we do something like that? And I made up a proposal and got it approved. And then we later realized that Dan was teaching Lisa in that workshop because I think Louise was on a break or something and had chosen Dan as her teacher. So really, Louise is directly responsible for Queer Poem a Day too. So this is I Wish for Another Poem, presented by Queer Poem a Day and featuring poets from Queer Poem a Day and the Deerfield Public Library podcast. And our first reader tonight, in alphabetical order, is Dan Chason, who is joining us from a recording. So I'll share that now.
Hi, I'm Dan Chason. I'm so glad to be a part of this tribute to Louise Glück, and thanks to Dylan and Lisa and everyone at the library for organizing this, and thanks for all the incredible work that you've done to make an imprint on contemporary poetry out of the Deerfield Library, a place I've never been, but I've participated a few times in your work, and it's made a real difference the last few years. So, congratulations. And this latest thing is amazing to be a part of. I'm going to read one poem from Louise's 1999 volume Vita Nova, the title poem, the concluding poem. I met Louise right around this time, 1999. I was invited by Frank Bedart to join the two of them for their, I think, weekly or even twice weekly dinner, always at the same restaurant, until they grew tired of it and moved to the next exclusive venue. At the time, they were eating at Coriana in Cambridge, which is delicious. It's still there. Do yourself a favor. It's on Broadway in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She had just moved down from Vermont. We were able to bond quite a bit about Vermont. There were odd coincidences that connected us. Nevertheless, I was really nervous at first, and getting to know her, I would just clam up. I could barely make a peep. I made sort of mammalian sounds that we had to get over. And then I compensated by doing just the opposite, which was talking way too much and leaping into the middle of her really exquisitely timed conversational pace with my own thoughts. She spoke to me about this, and later I read an essay, great essay by her called Education of the Poet, where she talks about, in fact, the frustration of growing up in a family where I think she says it was seen as the right of every member of the family to complete the other members of the family's thoughts. So one had to learn a rhythm, a pace with her. I think I learned it actually by reading, partly by reading the poems that she was writing and publishing in that period, which have such an astounding, I think, sample of her mind and wit and layers of insight and breakthroughs happening sort of in real time in the course of the poem. The poems feel, I have no idea how much she labored on them, actually, these particular poems, but they certainly feel improvisational to me. You just don't know where they're going to go. And she's so funny and so strange and so heartbreaking in them. So, yeah, so by reading them, I think I learned how to be with her somehow. I don't know. Anyway, the poem is called Vita Nova, and I will now read it. Vita Nova. In the splitting up dream, we were fighting over who would keep the dog, Blizzard. You tell me what the name means. He was a cross between something big and fluffy and a dachshund. Does this have to be the male and female genitalia? Poor Blizzard. Why was he a dog? He barely touched the hummus in his dog food dish. Then there was something else, a sound, like gravel being moved, or sand, the sands of time. Then it was Erica with her maracas, like the sands of time personified. Who will explain this to the dog? Blizzard, Daddy needs you. Daddy's heart is empty, not because he's leaving Mommy, but because the kind of love he wants, Mommy doesn't have. Mommy's too ironic. Mommy wouldn't do the Roomba in the driveway. Or is this wrong? Supposing I'm the dog, as in my child self, unconsolable because completely pre-verbal, with anorexia. Oh, Blizzard, be a brave dog. This is all material. You'll wake up in a different world. You will eat again. You will grow up into a poet. Life is very weird, no matter how it ends. Very filled with dreams. Never will I forget your face, your frantic human eyes swollen with tears. I thought my life was over and my heart was broken. Then I moved to Cambridge.
Lisa, do you want to introduce our poets now?
Sure. So I can just also say for the poets who are in the room, I don't know if you all already saw, but here's sort of the order. Is Shangyang in here?
Yes.
Hello.
So when you're ready, you'll be next, and I've got that list up for so we can just kind of keep going in order.
Sounds good. Thank you for inviting me, having me, Lisa and Dylan. And it's so nice to see some familiar faces of friends, Jim and Richie, especially. You guys are handsome as always. I will share a light anecdote I had with Louise. So by the end of my time in California, Berkeley, I visited her place in Berkeley and I cooked for her. I arrived at 2 p.m. in the afternoon and cooked until 6 p.m. 4 hours, 10 dishes, 10 courses. And during that time, Louise put on Rigoletto by Verdi and we gossiped for 4 hours. She was helping me peeling garlic, potatoes, chopping scallions. The potato that night was miraculous, of course, because she peeled them. And she was very curious about the spices I brought. One of them is fermented black bean. She asked me what it is. I said it's rabbit shit, and she was shocked. But the real difficulty was that she didn't have a rice cooker. And I didn't want to bring mine because it's heavy and huge. So by the end of the dinner, all the guests are still present. We're still drinking. And Louise said, "What a feast we just had. Thank you, Shangyang. All the courses are delicious, except that the rice is a real disappointment." So that's Louise, always a truthful and honest person. And I remember later, in a different conversation, she said to me that if I am useless if I'm not truthful, which I find is very hot. I'm going to read a poem by her, Priest Isle. In every life, there's a moment or two. In every life, a room somewhere by the sea or in the mountains. On the table, a dish of apricots, pits in a white ashtray. Like all images, these were the conditions of a pact. On your cheek, tremor of sunlight. My finger pressing your lips, the walls blue-white, paint from the low bureau flaking a little. That room must still exist, on the 4th floor, with a small balcony overlooking the ocean. A square white room on the top sheet pulled back over the edge of the bed. It hasn't dissolved back into nothing, into reality. Through the open window, sea air smelling of iodine. Early morning, a man calling a small boy back from the water. That small boy, he would be 20 now. Around your face, rushes of damp hair streaked with auburn, muslin, flicker of silver, heavy jar filled with white peonies. Thank you.
Hi, I think I'm next, so I will go. Oh, got the thumbs up. Yep, great. Okay. My name is Sophie, and I worked with Louise at Boston University. She was my teacher, and then she later became my mentor. Um, and like just a couple things about her. I just remember how when we would be in workshop, she'd have the printed poem, and she'd be holding it kind of from the bottom, and it'd kind of be drooping, and she'd be workshopping some poem, and she'd just say, "It's flailing." And that was just like so brutal, to whoever was getting workshopped, but it was so on the nose. And it's just great. She just does not mince words. Anyway, so that was one thing. And the other thing is it was just when I started working with her, it was just, and I'm sure everybody else has felt this way, that the feeling of relief of having your work read and understood for what it was or what it should be, and knowing that she could guide you there. So that's why she's awesome. Okay, so she had multiple facets and multiple identities, but she continued to shed them and transcend them in her work. But since I'm a mother, I've been kind of returning to her poems about motherhood. So this one's called Mother and Child. We're all dreamers. We don't know who we are. Some machine made us, machine of the world, the constricting family. Then back to the world polished by soft whips. We dream, we don't remember. Machine of the family, dark fur forests of the mother's body. Machine of the mother, white city inside her. And before that, earth and water, moss between rocks, pieces of leaves and grass, and before cells in a great darkness, and before that, the veiled world. This is why you were born, to silence me. Cells of my mother and father, it is your turn to be pivotal, to be the masterpiece. I improvised. I never remembered. Now it's your turn to be driven. You're the one who demands to know. Why do I suffer? Why am I ignorant? Cells in a great darkness. Some machine made us. It is your turn to address it, to go back asking, what am I for? What am I for? Thank you.
I'm Lisa Heighton. Louise was my MFA advisor with Sophie and Dan, who are also in here, and my mentor thereafter. And Louise has so many iconic poems, and I'm going to read one that I wish were more iconic. This is the last poem in Triumph of Achilles. Louise, despite, I think, the public's perception that so much of the work takes on the figurative, right? She's won a Pulitzer for a book in which most of the poems are written in the voices of various flora and fauna. I think that's a grave misreading. I think she was deeply literal. I think that's true in workshop too. An early workshop of a poem of mine in her hands. I'll never forget this. Louise would sort of sit back in workshop and let everybody kind of start talking about the poem. And at the very end of that person's turn, she would sort of come in and clean up and say what we did and didn't get right, like as a collective workshop, usually what we didn't get right. And I remember her saying, I hope you heard the beginning of the poem is electric, and then you got in the way. And I think about that all the time when I'm doing revision, which is like, where was the lightning striking, and where did my thinking self get in the way of letting the speaker and the poem live in their own imagined space? I think this poem I'm going to read does it tremendously. I also think Dylan and I have spent a lot of time talking about lineage in our programming over the last few years. Part of what's important to me is that I haven't, was devastating to lose someone whose work and whose teaching was so influential this year. But also in the lineage, this poem Louise once said in a recording was between a husband and a wife. I think it's more literal than that. I think the horse in the poem is actually Ariel. There's a way at the end of Plath's poem, and Plath is very influential in Louise's first 4 books, The Red Poppy, things like that. There's a way that the speaker of this poem of Louise's, I think, is watching that horse ride into what Plath calls the cauldron of mourning, and it ends the book and gets us out of the book. So here is probably my first favorite Louise poem. I feel like when I first read it, I absorbed it in a way that it divined something in me. Horse. What does the horse give you that I cannot give you? I watch you when you are alone, when you ride through the field behind the dairy, your hands buried in the mare's dark mane. Then I know what lies behind your silence. Scorn, hatred of me, of marriage. Still, you want me to touch you. You cry out as brides cry. But when I look at you, I see there are no children in your body. Then what is there? Nothing, I think, only haste to die before I die. In a dream, I watched you ride the horse over the dry fields and then dismount. You two walked together. In the dark, you had no shadows, but I felt them coming toward me. Since at night they can go anywhere. They are their own masters. Look at me. You think I don't understand? What is the animal, if not passage out of this life?
Hi, I'm Richie Hoffman. I picked an early poem from Louise, and it's not a very well-known one, but it's one I've always loved. And it's the second poem in her second book, and I just loved that. I think one thing I love about this poem and about Louise Glück's work more broadly is just how intimate it can be. This one is so kind of starkly desirous, and there's such a beautiful kind of porous veil between the world around the speaker and her own body. And I also love this tension in her work between erotic indulgence and erotic refusal. which I think you hear everywhere. It's called The Pond. Night covers the pond with its wing. Under the ringed moon, I can make out your face swimming among minnows and the small echoing stars. In the night air, the surface of the pond is metal. Within, your eyes are open. They contain a memory I recognize, as though we had been children together. Our ponies grazed on the hill. They were gray with white markings. Now they graze with the dead, who wait like children under their granite breastplates, lucid and helpless. The hills are far away. They rise up blacker than childhood. What do you think of, lying so quietly by the water? When you look that way, I want to touch you, but do not, seeing as in another life, we were of the same blood.
Thanks so much, Richie. That was very beautiful. I'm Dan Kraines. I was Louise's student, and it's really terrible to think of having lost Louise and her contemporaries and friends. Good to be with you all here on the Zoom, though, tonight. Mock Orange is a poem I love by Louise. Mock Orange. It is not the moon, I tell you. It is these flowers lighting the yard. I hate them. I hate them as I hate sex. The man's mouth sealing my mouth. The man's paralyzing body. And the cry that always escapes. The low, humiliating premise of union. In my mind tonight, I hear the question and pursuing answer fused in one sound that mounts and mounts, and then is split into the old selves, the tired antagonisms. Do you see? We were made fools of, and the scent of mock orange drifts through the window. How can I rest? How can I be content when there is still that odor in the world? Thank you so much to Queer Poem a Day for having me.
Thank you for reminding me to unmute myself. Hi, I'm D.A. Powell. I was not a student of Louise's, but I met her when I was in graduate school. She came and gave a reading at University of Iowa. And somehow she remembered me when I moved to Boston years later, and we became fast friends. These past several years, when she has traveled to the Bay Area and taken up residency in Berkeley, we've been able to spend a lot of time together. And I even suffered through Louise's first attempts to send text messages. And we kept up an active correspondence, both on the phone and on the phone. And I miss her dearly. another friend of mine and of Louise's, Henri Cole, and I were talking the other night. He's in Paris and not able to make the time adjustment to be here. But we agreed that this book, Winter Recipes from the Collective, is probably one of the finest books Louise wrote and, saved for that time when she was at the height of her art. And this is the final poem in the book. It's called Song. Leo Cruz makes the most beautiful white bowls. I think I must get some to you, but how is the question in these times? He is teaching me the names of the desert grasses. I have a book, since to see the grasses is impossible. Leo thinks the things man makes are more beautiful than what exists in nature. And I say no. And Leo says, wait and see. We make plans to walk the trails together. When I ask him, when? Never again. That is what we do not say. He is teaching me to live in imagination. A cold wind blows as I cross the desert. I can see his house in the distance. Smoke is coming from the chimney that is the kiln, I think. Only Leo makes porcelain in the desert. Ah, he says, you are dreaming again. And I say that I'm glad I dream. The fire is still alive.
Hello, my name is Jamine, and I'm going to read a poem from the first book of Louise's that I encountered, which was Ararat. And that was remarkable for me as a queer poet, that there is a possibility of denying the reader, but also denying the self. This is the untrustworthy speaker. Don't listen to me. My heart's been broken. I don't see anything objectively. I know myself. I've learned to hear like a psychiatrist. When I speak passionately, that's when I'm least to be trusted. It's very sad, really. All my life, I've been praised for my intelligence, my powers of language, of insight. In the end, they're wasted. I never see myself standing on the front steps, holding my sister's hand. That's why I can't account for the bruises on her arm where the sleeve ends. In my own mind, I'm invisible. That's why I'm dangerous. People like me who seem selfless, we're the cripples, the liars. We're the ones who should be factored out in the interest of truth. When I'm quiet, that's when the truth emerges. A clear sky, the clouds like white fibers. Underneath, a little gray house, the azaleas, red and bright pink. If you want the truth, you have to close yourself to the older daughter, block her out. When a living thing is hurt like that in its deepest workings, all function is altered. That's why I'm not to be trusted, because a wound to the heart is also a wound to the mind. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you to Lisa and Dylan for the work you do with the Deerfield Public Library and the Queer Poem a Day podcast. I'm Jim Whiteside, by the way. I guess I should have led with that. It's so nice to see so many friends joining as fellow readers this evening and as viewers. I worked with Louise during my time as a Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford, and there's much that can be said about her and her teaching and has already been said, but I'll leave my contribution at this. She was generous to me in remarkable ways, and in doing so, she taught me to be generous to myself. She taught me to find patience in my poems and to have patience with myself as I wrote them. I'm last to read this evening, and I've chosen a bit of a finale piece. It's written in 6 numbered sections. Rather than announce each new section, I'll just give a good pause. So it's from her book of Verno, and this is October. Is it winter again? Is it cold again? Didn't Frank just slip on the ice? Didn't he heal? Weren't the spring seeds planted? Didn't the night end? Didn't the melting ice flood the narrow gutters? Wasn't my body rescued? Wasn't it safe? Didn't the scar form, invisible above the injury? Terror and cold, didn't they just end? Wasn't the back garden harrowed and planted? I remember how the earth felt, red and dense, in stiff rows. Weren't the seeds planted? Didn't vines climb the south wall? I can't hear your voice for the wind's cries, whistling over the bare ground. I no longer care what sound it makes. When I was silenced, when did it first seem pointless to describe that sound? What it sounds like can't change what it is. Didn't the night end? Wasn't the earth safe when it was planted? Didn't we plant the seeds? Weren't we necessary to the earth? The vines, were they harvested? Summer after summer has ended, balm after violence. It does me no good to be good to me now. Violence has changed me. Daybreak. The low hills shine ochre and fire. Even the fields shine. I know what I see. Sun that could be the August sun, returning everything that was taken away. You hear this voice? This is my mind's voice. You can't touch my body now. It has changed once. It has hardened. Don't ask it to respond again. A day like a day in summer, exceptionally still. The long shadows of the maples, nearly mauve on the gravel paths, and in the evening, warmth. Night like a night in summer. It does me no good. Violence has changed me. My body has grown cold like the stripped fields. Now there is only my mind, cautious and wary, with the sense it is being tested. Once more, the sun rises as it rose in summer. Bounty, balm after violence, balm after the leaves have changed, after the fields have been harvested and turned. Tell me this is the future. I won't believe you. Tell me I'm living. I won't believe you. Snow had fallen. I remember music from an open window. Come to me, said the world. This is not to say it spoke in exact sentences, but that I perceived beauty in this manner. Sunrise, a film of moisture on each living thing. Pools of cold light formed in the gutters. I stood at the doorway, ridiculous as it now seems. What others found in art, I found in nature. What others found in human love, I found in nature. Very simple, there was no voice there. Winter was over. In the thawed dirt, bits of green were showing. Come to me, said the world. I was standing in my wool coat at a kind of bright portal. I can finally say long ago. It gives me considerable pleasure. Beauty, the healer, the teacher. Death cannot harm me more than you have harmed me, my beloved life. The light has changed. Middle C is tuned darker now, and the songs of morning sound over-rehearsed. This is the light of autumn, not the light of spring. The light of autumn, you will not be spared. The songs have changed. The unspeakable has entered them. This is the light of autumn, not the light that says, I am reborn. Not the spring dawn. I strained, I suffered, I was delivered. This is the present, an allegory of waste. So much has changed, and still you are fortunate. The ideal burns in you like a fever, or not like a fever, like a second heart. The songs have changed, but really they are still quite beautiful. They have been concentrated in a smaller space, the space of the mind. They are dark now, with desolation and anguish. And yet the notes recur. They hover oddly in anticipation of silence. The ear gets used to them. The eye gets used to disappearances. You will not be spared, nor will what you love be spared. A wind has come and gone, taking apart the mind. It has left in its wake a strange lucidity. How privileged you are to be passionately clinging to what you love. The forfeit of hope has not destroyed you. Maetoso, doloroso. This is the light of autumn. It has changed, it has turned on us. Surely it is a privilege to approach the end, still believing in something. It is true there is not enough beauty in the world. It is also true that I am not competent to restore it. Neither is there candor, and here I may be of some use. I am at work, though I am silent. The bland misery of the world bounds us on either side, an alley lined with trees. We are companions here, not speaking, each with his own thoughts. Behind the trees, iron gates of the private houses, the shuttered rooms, somehow deserted, abandoned, as though it were the artist's duty to create hope. But out of what? What? The world itself false, a device to refute perception. At the intersection, ornamental lights of the season. I was young here, riding the subway with my small book, as though to defend myself against the same world. You are not alone, the poem said, in the dark tunnel. The brightness of the day becomes the brightness of the night. The fire becomes the mirror. My friend, the earth is bitter. I think sunlight has failed her. Bitter or weary, it is hard to say. Between herself and the sun, something has ended. She wants now to be left alone. I think we must give up turning to her for affirmation. Above the fields, above the roofs of the village houses, the brilliance that made all life possible becomes the cold stars. Lie still and watch. They give nothing but ask nothing. From within the earth's bitter disgrace, coldness and barrenness, my friend the moon rises. She is beautiful tonight. But when is she not beautiful? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This is really an honor to hold this space for you as a public library program, and to do public library programming about poetry, about queer poetry, is very special. So I just want to thank you all for joining us. I was looking for a quote of Louise's to say, and this is from the poem The Garden from The Descending Figure. I'm just going to read a couple lines to end us here. But my body, that could not content itself with health, why should it be sprung back into the cord of sunlight? Thank you all. I'll stay on the Zoom for a few minutes if you want to chat, but
You know, Jim, like it's really hard. I welled up like 3 times. That poem October is so important in so many ways. And losing her in October and having so many parts of that poem that because they're really from the predicament of the month after 9/11, they like arrive at these incredible, we feel like they're universal truths, but they're really epiphanies and they're epigrammatic. And it's hard to not have the meta text of having to go on without affirmation from her, from the moon, from all those things that symbolically, I think for those of us who knew Louise in some way, I think that's part of what it meant to know her, was to have to sort of love her in that way and know you're going to be loved or not, affirmed or not, in all kinds of ways. So it was just such a little meta ending after hearing so many brilliant poems. I also loved hearing all of you choose works that I was like, of course D.A. Powell's going to read song. Like it was so beautiful to hear everybody's way of holding this work. Thank you.
I thought I could hear her voice in your work, knowing all of your work pretty well. And that was really, really astounding.
The lineage continues. Thank you, Paul.
All right, we'll end it there for tonight. Thank you again so much. I wish you all a wonderful evening.